Jessica Lemaitre in the newsroom. As Europe basks in the glory of its Nobel Peace Prize, rewarding 6 decades of stability, well, it now faces a new threat of partition. And no, we're not talking about the Eurozone. Rugby fans have long sung Flower of Scotland, Robert Burns' ode to the 1314 Battle of Bannockburn, where Robert the Bruce's men defeated English's invaders. Well, it just so happens that for the 700th anniversary of that battle in 2014, Britain's Prime Minister and Scotland's First Minister have signed on to an agreement this Monday to hold a referendum on Scottish independence. This could lead to the United Kingdom breaking up after 300 years. Independence, the course charted by charismatic Flemish nationalist Bart de Wever, who Sunday handily won municipal elections in Antwerp. The UK, Belgium, Spain, where Catalonian separatists also want to break free. Even though all three movements are Europhile, the real impact on the EU is anyone's guess, especially when the pro-independence party's main selling point is to wrest control of their own tax revenue. Today in the France 24 debate, we're taking a close look at Europe's separatist wave. And with us from Brussels, Tony Cruanes, correspondent for Catalonian broadcaster TV3. Tony, I guess it's confusing. Should I say you're at the home of the European Commission, or are you in the Belgian capital today?
Well, they said that that Brussels is actually 3 times capital of the European Union, of Belgium, and also of Flanders. Well, there's no better day to be here than today, for sure.
Okay. Also with us today is France 24 European Affairs editor Christophe Robit.
Good evening.
A native of Belgium himself.
A native of Belgium with a Flemish father and a Wallonian mother.
That's it, for parody all the way. Also joining us from Dublin, Ian O'Brien, Economic and European Policy Advisor for Sinn Féin, and author of, I hope I can pronounce this right, Ian, Machinada Basque Nationalism and Radical Basque Youth Movements. Is that right?
That's absolutely perfect.
Okay. By the way, the France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at François F24. Let's begin with what happened on Sunday north of the French border. Bart de Wever's Flemish nationalist NVA party sweeping municipal elections. The man himself wresting Antwerp City Hall from the left for the first time since the war.
De N-VA boekt de grootste verkiezingsoverwinning sinds de Tweede Wereldoorlog, gebaseerd op de uitslag voor de provincieraadsverkiezingen.
In one fell swoop, we became the biggest local party in Flanders. We not only did as well as our monster score in 2010, we did even better, and no one could have expected this. It is incredible. It is a black and yellow Sunday.
A black and yellow Sunday, I suppose the colors of his party. Christophe Robit, this Monday, though, he's qualified his position slightly. He said, we have never talked about breaking up or a revolution. Where does Bart de Wever stand? What does he want to do with the Flemish part of Belgium?
Bart de Wever is a historian by training. He knows that history takes a lot of time to be written. He has a lot of patience. He's also a great chess player. And I think it's fair to say that he's one of the most brilliant minds that Flanders has had in decades. And that's precisely the problem today. I was watching the TV debate.
So what you're saying is that his real intentions are hard to follow in this case.
His real intentions are hard to follow because at the moment he's saying what I want is a confederation. A confederation would mean further devolution to the regions. At the moment, Belgium is already a federal state with a federal government, but a lot of powers that are devolved to the regions. He wants to go further, particularly when it comes to fiscal policies, because that's really his main argument at the moment, is to say that Flanders has become the cash cow of Belgium and that Flemish taxpayers are paying for as he sometimes called them, the lazy Walloons, who are, as a rule, more inclined to be unemployed and on benefits. That's his message. I was saying he's a chess player, because the problem in Flanders at the moment is that you have a clear crisis of leadership. And when I was watching the political debates ahead of this election, it was striking that this guy is so much more, in a sense, I don't know if clever is the right word, but so much more brilliant than the other leaders of the Flemish parties. And this has created a sort of disbalance. You have a new generation of leaders at the helm of the Liberal Party, of the Christian Democrats, who aren't as powerful as their predecessors and clearly don't know how to position themselves. But to answer your question, I think back deep inside of his mind, yes, Bart de Wever wants independence for Flanders. He has never hidden his agenda. He's just tried to sound more palatable in order to attract more votes.
Jan O'Brien, I don't want to get too scholarly here, but there is a comment we have on Twitter. Brice from Perpignan says, independentism and separatism are different concepts. Do we have to be careful in the words we use when we're having this discussion?
Well, of course, depending on who's having the conversation, each of those words can mean different things. I suppose at the core of all of this is questions of democracy and whether or not people are given the right to decide the constitutional and institutional framework that they feel best suits their needs as peoples, whether that's in Scotland or Catalonia or Ireland or elsewhere. And I think, one of the very positive things, and obviously you have the Edinburgh Agreement reached between David Cameron and Alex Salmond in Scotland. Very clearly you're seeing for the first time in 300 years the right of people in that European nation, Scotland, to determine their own constitutional and institutional framework and relationship with Britain and the rest of what they call the United Kingdom. So there is a democratic imperative in terms of giving people the right to decide. And then, of course, what decision do they make? Do they want greater autonomy? Do they want independence? Do they want partition? Or in the case of Ireland, do we want an end to partition and the reunification of our own national territory? And I think really what's important is recognising the democratic imperative. And keep in mind, all of this happens in the context of a debate about Europe's and the European Union's democratic deficit, where increasingly people feel alienated from decision-making centres, particularly in the European Commission and the European Council, because, of course, decisions are being taken further and further away from where people live their day-to-day lives. So, again, one of the great values of some of these debates is trying to wrest power back as close as possible to where people are, and very often that's actually where the best decisions are made.
All right, interesting. So we're going to, as we continue this discussion, we're going to try to have a look at where there's a common thread and where things are a little bit different. There you see Jan spelling out some of the differences when it comes to Ireland. Before we continue, though, Christophe, here's the question. Has everyone tongue-tied at the editorial meeting here at France 24 this morning? How do you lose 60 kilos in 8 months? We can show you there's before and there's after. How do you do it? What happened to Bart de Wever?
He shrank. For sure, as you said, he used to weigh 142 kilos compared to 83 nowadays. I think behind this dramatic weight loss, there's also a strong message from Bart de Wever. Is to say to Flemish voters, see how better you feel when you lose all the fat, when you lose all these kilos that you don't want to keep. I think it was felt a bit ironically on the other side of the linguistic border, as we call it in Belgium. I mean in Wallonia, it was a sort of message to say, yes, you can change a country. And I think it's a very powerful metaphor. How did he do it? Apparently he took some Spanish pills that are not allowed in Belgium. That's according to Le Soir. That's what I read this afternoon. I don't know if it's important, but it's a message, of course, that he's a very determined man, ready to change things, including himself.
Tony Kouranias, the irony of that weight loss, I suppose it's not lost on your viewers.
No, but I would even say that these pills that he actually ate, they were Catalan, actually. They were sent by Catalonia. So apparently there's a link there. No, but jokes apart, I think there was something very interesting. It's the point that the European Union has something to do in the debate, both in Scotland and then in the Flemish debate and also in Catalonia. But I think they are very different, because when I hear the arguments, the debate, both both in Flemish arguments and in Catalan arguments, they are always for European Union. Instead, actually, they are arguing that they would be better off just appealing directly to straight away to Brussels. In the case of Catalonia, that is very clear. One of the reasons to explain why this explosion of nationalism in Catalonia is because of the role that the Spanish government is having right now in the middle of the European crisis, because Catalonia is deceived about the way this is taken. Well, the Catalans think that maybe they would be better off without the rest of Spain. And this is a quite different debate. I think in Scotland, when they talk about devolution, they talk about having the European Union far away. We are talking from Barcelona about having the European Union even closer, in a closer look. Yeah.
And Tony Carañas, let's cut to the chase here. A month ago in the streets of Barcelona, more than 1 million people turning out for demonstrations. Now you've got snap elections called for next month. What's really going to happen next?
Well, the truth is that we don't know. Well, we know that the nationalists are going to win the elections. There's going to be a very big victory both for the actual president of Catalonia and other parties that have supported the idea of a referendum. But we don't know what's going to happen after that. The truth is that we see there's going to be a referendum in Scotland. We know today for sure that that is going to happen because London and Edinburgh have struck a deal which they call the Edinburgh deal, the Edinburgh Agreement. Well, we have nothing like that in Spain. Actually, the law is against any kind of referendum that is not has not the yes of Madrid, of the Spanish government. And in Madrid, they don't even think about the possibility of a referendum just in Catalonia. So that is a problem because we've got the democratic will of 70% of people, according to polls, in Catalonia wanting this referendum, and then there's the law saying no, you cannot have it. So there's going to be a real problem, a legal problem. The Spanish constitution doesn't talk specifically about referendums, but it's very flexible. On the one hand, it talks about nationalities, including Catalonia as a nationality in Spain, but at the same time, it says that the army has the right to use its force for the unity of the country. So then it's not easy to guess what's going to happen after the elections.
When you go to Barcelona, to Catalunya Square, there's that big banner that reads, welcome, what is it? I think to the next Eurozone member. Jan O'Brien, being closer to Europe is not what your party's all about.
Well, no, that's not the case. I mean, we're very critical of the current direction of European integration, but we're certainly not in favour of withdrawal or Ireland distancing ourselves from the EU, anything but. I suppose part of the debate here, however, is about where decisions are best made. So, for example, we strongly believe that Ireland should be a member state of the European Union, but we think in recent years two things have happened which have caused considerable difficulties, particularly for smaller EU member states like Ireland. First is we've increased centralisation of decision-making, particularly in the hands of unelected bodies such as the Commission, which, of course, is never good for any democratic state. But also, increasingly, the policy direction of EU integration is being written into treaty laws. And of course, treaty law being a little bit like the constitutional foundation of the EU is the last place you should see policy prescriptions on economic or trade or foreign policy written. They should be in the ordinary legislative procedures. So I suppose our debate is slightly different. We want to see a different type of Europe, and we want to see the relationships between the member states, particularly smaller member states, altered in a way that redresses the democratic deficit that has grown over recent years. And I suppose a good example is questions of monetary and fiscal policy. We have seen, for example, the very negative impact of a one-size-fits-all monetary policy, particularly on the smaller and peripheral economies of the Eurozone, and Ireland's difficulties are well known. Now people are saying, well, on top of that one-size-fits-all monetary policy, we should have a one-size-fits-all fiscal policy, which of course would double the difficulties we currently have. So I think it's quite complementary to talk about the need to redress the balance between the centre and the periphery, and at the same time looking at the possibility of more member states of Europe subject to the democratic will of people such as Catalonia, Scotland or elsewhere.
Christophe, has Bart de Wever ever called into question that one-size-fits-all monetary union?
No, he's. That's the interesting thing. on the European level, he's a pro-European, and he believes in Europe, and he uses Europe as the counter-argument when he's being told Flanders alone can't survive or Wallonia alone can't survive. He says we will survive, we will flourish within Europe. But of course, the fiscal argument at the national level is very interesting in Belgium, because he's always been saying the problem with Flanders is that we're richer, we're more prosperous, more dynamic, and we're paying for the others, i.e. for Brussels and for Wallonia. And the current crisis gives even more arguments to his party, because it says, look, he calls the current government regering belasting, the government of taxes. That is how he calls the Prime Minister of Di Rupo. So it's very easy for him to say, look, because of the crisis, they're taxing us. If we were autonomous or independent, we would be better off.
And replace the words Bart de Wever with Artur Mas in Catalonia. And is it the same discourse, Tony Krianis?
Well, when we talk about fiscality, that's 100% the same. And actually, that has been the last drop in the negotiations in between Barcelona and Madrid, just trying to get a fiscal pact, they called it, a way of seeing how to finance the autonomous government of Barcelona, which has been in debt for years. And the situation now is devastating in terms of, we've seen how the civil servants working for the Catalan government have seen their wages cut in nearly 20% in some cases. It is, of course, true that the situation, the economic crisis, has spread the idea of independence in Catalonia to a level which nobody thought it could be possible just 2, 3, 4 years ago. But at the same time, I'd like to point out that we are talking here about small nations in Europe, and there is definitely this idea that the European Union can be an umbrella, something that historically they needed for a bigger kingdom, a bigger nation, a bigger state. Now there is this alternative, which is an alternative easy to show to the public in terms of saying, okay, maybe, for example, in the case of Catalonia, for 300 years, we needed our market in the rest of Spain or even in Latin America. Well, nowadays, you don't need that. The argument is that you've got already a market for your products in the European Union. I think it's quite the same case for Flanders.
And you have one currency, of course. That's the argument he's using. Why do we need Belgium? We can live together in different states. We will share the same currency, but we won't share our debts. That's the message, of course.
And when we come back, we're going to look more in detail at the issue of Scotland and that agreement signed this Monday to stage a referendum in 2014. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.